What is real? Is this real? How do you distinguish between dream and reality? Through your senses? Through what you've been told? The same question could be asked for the stunning World's Fair. Was it a reality as presented, or does it belong to the realm of dreams and fantasy? If you're willing to explore this question, you almost have to step away from the usual ways we learn about history. We're handed a version of reality about what happened, our conventional history, but what we take as real can be misleading. So where do the World's Fairs actually exist? Are they a part of our real past, or something closer to a collective dream? Let's begin with a pretty odd early cartoon about the World's Fair that most people haven't heard of. It's called All's Fair at the Fair, made in 1938 by the Fleischer Brothers. It's a 7-minute short that's supposed to be a lighthearted peek at a futuristic exposition. However, there are many uncanny elements to this cartoon. The cartoon starts off with the sign, "The World's Fair is opening today." But it's just an empty plot of land. In less than 3 seconds, the entire fair is built at lightning speed by what looks to be ants. It's basically poking fun at the official story, how these World's Fairs supposedly went up so fast. Crowds start floating in, carried by a sardine-like train that seems to sweep everyone in, almost as if visiting is mandatory or something you have to see. Then there's an old-fashioned couple making their way to the fair by horse and cart. The cartoon follows this rustic couple as they show up at the high-tech fairgrounds and come face to face with all kinds of ultra-modern inventions. Everything is run by robots. Some inventions are very bizarre, like this one where a lamb is hooked up to a machine that makes sweaters while it gets worked and de-wooled. Another bit shows giant logs of wood being used for much smaller things, like furniture or even an entire log just to make a single clothespin. The couple is fascinated, moving on to a machine that builds houses automatically, kind of like a kit. And it's pretty close to what they did in the early 1900s, when you could order a whole home from a catalog. After all that, in this futuristic world, of course the stork comes by and drops off a baby. It's almost as if this is a nod to the incubator babies at the World's Fair. Not only can you get your house, you can just pick up your baby too. Interestingly, right after the scene of the stork, the couple gets thirsty and goes to this orange drink machine, which showcases technology that can speed up the growth of an orange tree, just to produce one fruit so that the couple could enjoy a fresh glass of orange juice. The next strange part isn't just about the technology, it's about the couples themselves. They go through this conversion process where they both enter an automated beauty treatment center, and it literally restores their youth, turning them from elders into a young, beautiful couple. The lady especially goes through some pretty intense treatment. Her hair gets chemically changed, a machine chokes her while spraying mud all over her face, and then it starts forcing makeup on her. She's even put into a molding machine that physically presses and shapes her into the ideal woman for this new world. Now that they're refreshed, they're ready to dance. They head to a celebration room, fully embracing this automated reality. But the music's all played by robots, and instead of dancing together as a couple, they each end up dancing with these lifelike androids. It's worth pointing out just how impressive this animation is for the time. Especially when the androids are dancing, it has a fluidity that beats a lot of modern animation. So what's the message here? It's basically an exaggerated riff on the whole World's Fair idea, remolding people, physically and mentally, to prepare them for some new futuristic reality. It's all about programming the mind for a new world. And you have to keep in mind who the Fleischer brothers were. A lot of their cartoons are packed with secret society and Masonic themes. They made Popeye, Bimbo, and Betty Boop. One of the most surreal and trippy animations is Bimbo's Initiation, which is basically a Masonic initiation in cartoon form. The short starts with, "We are members of Do It or Die," and then there's a line about watches like Bimbo being easy as pie. Keep that in mind for later. Bimbo is just walking down the street when he falls through a manhole. But a weird detail is that after the cover falls back down, a little Mickey Mouse character comes out and locks the manhole. Why did they throw Mickey Mouse into this? Especially since there are people who claim Disney was a secret Freemason. So Bimbo falls through an underground tunnel and ends up in a secret meeting under the city. The members are all dressed in pajama-like clothes with black masks or heads, and each one is wearing these candlestick hats. One thing that stands out is the obvious Masonic paddles. If you didn't know, Freemasons in the past had a weird fascination with spanking, and the cartoon makes that pretty clear. The group starts singing "Wanna Become a Member," but Bimbo responds with a firm no. He's then raised up on a platform into what looks like a gambling room, and there's a door with an exit sign. Bimbo's obviously freaked out about what just happened, but when he sees the exit, he heads for it, only to find out it's just a fake, a drawing of an exit. As Bimbo falls for it, the members watch from a hidden room and laugh. This is when the real nightmare begins. The group keeps asking Bimbo if he wants to join, but every time he refuses, he's put through all kinds of torture scenarios. He almost gets stabbed in the rear by a giant knife as the room turns into a moving platform. Kind of weird, almost like someone's actually enjoying all this. He's then dropped into a dark room where he's stuck to the floor while a huge spiked weight hangs over him, suspended by a rope that's slowly burning from a candle. There's even a close-up where the ashes floating up from the fire look like sperm, which, accidental or not, shows up in early Masonic illustrations too. The weight drops and Bimbo falls through another hole, where the members keep asking him if he wants to join, but he continues to refuse. He's brought up another platform, facing 4 doors, one with the skull, one with the 13, one with the question mark, and one with the hand. Is this supposed to be a friendly fraternity? Door 13 has a skeleton inside. Bimbo goes through the question mark door and finds himself on a bike, getting repeatedly spanked until it actually hurts. He tries to escape by jumping into the water, but it's just an illusion. Also notice the checkerboard floors. Then Betty Boop shows up and leads Bimbo through a maze of warped tunnels and death traps, ending in a new room where she asks if he wants to join. This time, he finally says yes, basically seduced by Betty, and then all the members reveal themselves to be a bunch of Betty Boops. They all dance and celebrate. Hooray, Bimbo's finally a member. Another member you might not know, and one that the Fleischers also created, is Popeye. Popeye is literally a Mason who beats up anyone who isn't in the club. He even says this in the theme song. "I'm one tough gazookas who hates all palookas, who ain't on the up and square." They make this pretty obvious in a banned Popeye cartoon, supposedly pulled because of its racist depictions, but it's honestly just a really strange Popeye episode. And keep in mind, these are the same creators as the World's Fair cartoon. It's called Popeye and Popeye a la mode, where the opening scene has Popeye literally as a pie. That's interesting since pies come up in Bimbo too. The episode is weird. Popeye gets shipwrecked and ends up at a hotel on some island, but the place is run by a secret order of cannibals who want to eat him. The leader is a black man in a top hat, and you can catch the Masonic vibes when Popeye rings the doorbell. The guy looks through an eye hole and just sees Popeye as a piece of meat. They force feed Popeye to fatten him up, kind of like Hansel and Gretel, and when he's ready, They tell him that they're going to initiate him into the secret order of the Midnight Well, which just means they're planning to boil him alive and eat him. Sure, it's just a cartoon, but the symbolism here is wild. Why would you connect a secret order with cannibalism at all? There's another Popeye episode called Brotherly Love, where Popeye starts beating up social clubs because they can't get along, even punching Olive, gives her a black eye, and then pulls her up by the hair while singing, "All we need is brotherly love." If there's still any doubt, check out Can You Take It? Popeye and Olive are walking down the street when they come across a door that says Bruiser Club, hospital entrance. Notice the pillars by the door and the lamps shaped like globes. Classic Masonic pillar references. Olive says she works at the hospital, and as Popeye walks away, he sees a recruiting poster. Bruiser Boys Club, can you take it? We dare you to join. Popeye goes in, sees people fighting, and in the next shot, you've got people being carried from the initiation room to the hospital. Guess they couldn't handle it. Popeye wants in, so he approaches Bluto, the president, and says he can take it. Bluto gets mad, blindfolds him, and tells the gang to put him through the works. Popeye is kicked, punched, and sent through a door labeled 1st, 2nd, 3rd degree. That's the blue lodge degrees in Masonry. Notice the X on the wall from the clubs. During this initiation, he goes through a bunch of traps, including getting locked in a spiked coffin. Again, a weird obsession with rear ends and initiation pain, just like with Bimbo. The joke is, Popeye survives, so maybe he's worthy, but then they shoot a cannon at him and he ends up in the hospital ward. At the end, Olive helps him recover, and Popeye asks, "Am I a member?" But this time, Olive says, "No, you can't take it." So Popeye gets mad, eats his spinach, and that gives him the power to be a Mason, the new president of the club. There are plenty more references scattered throughout their cartoons, but this is enough to show that the creators of All's Fair at the World's Fair were heavily connected to Masonry and secret societies. It might seem random at first, but the link between World's Fairs and Masonry doesn't get talked about much. Let's keep going with this idea of false reality tied to the World's Fair, but now with the Little Nemo comics. Decades before the Fleischer cartoons, one of the biggest artists of the early 20th century in America was Winsor McCay. He's arguably the creator of the first real cartoon, Little Nemo. Little Nemo and Slumberland ran as a weekly strip in the New York Herald from 1905 to 1911. Then for a bit, it was called In the Land of Wonderful Dreams, before switching back, running until 1927. It's about a kid who has these wild, vivid dreams, always landing himself in strange predicaments, and in the final panel, he wakes up, constantly blurring the line between what's real and what's just a dream. Nemo visits dream cities that honestly look super Tartarian. Huge neoclassical buildings, giant palaces with a Moorish vibe. What's interesting is that McKay was directly inspired by Chicago's World Fair, with Nemo visiting these white cities in his dream world. Before diving into the comics themselves, it might make sense to start with the movie that came out in the 80s. It starts with a boy deep asleep in his room, surrounded by model flying machines hanging from the ceiling, an important detail. Nemo wakes up to find his bed flying above the neighborhood, then soaring over New York City. As he drifts through the clouds, he gets a vision of an apocalyptic New York, a total reset. The bed drops into the water, revealing the whole city is flooded. And during this, he's chased by a train in this super surreal, dreamlike way through the ruined city. Maybe it's a nod to the orphan trains after a reset. The train eventually chases him all the way back home, where he wakes up. It was just a dream. The next day, there's a circus parade, which is a key part of the movie because it really blurs the line between what's real and what's a dream. A lot of the characters in this parade shows up again later, but for now it's just worth noting that they're all part of this circus. That night, as Nemo's falling asleep, he basically goes through what looks like an alien abduction. His windows light up, and these clown-like jesters holding a sun flag, along with a man in a top hat called the Professor, shows up to hand Nemo an invitation. King Morpheus of Slumberland wants Nemo to be a playmate for Princess Camille, even sending his own personal dirigible. But this idea of flying ships is not just a fantasy. It is said that Tartaria had advanced flying tech, so seeing it here feels intentional. There are actual connections between dirigible ships and World's Fairs, and there were real attempts to build these kinds of flying machines in that era. Nemo is brought to Slumberland, which looks straight up like World's Fair architecture, grand Moorish palaces everywhere. And when he arrives, the king is missing, and that's when he meets Flip, a cigar-smoking clown in a top hat, who takes Nemo behind the scenes of Slumberland and instantly comes off as a bad influence. Nemo ends up deep under the palace, where he finally meets King Morpheus in this tiny train room. The king invites Nemo to be his heir to Slumberland, handing him a golden key shaped like an Ouroboros. This key can open any door in Slumberland, but there's one door, marked with the same symbol, that Nemo's warned never to open. In that scene, if you look closely, you can spot a clear 666 in the background among the air balloons. Also, there are American flags there, which is odd for a supposed dream world. Nemo then meets the princess in the Rosebud Room, where they then head out on an adventure, giving us a full look at the kingdom, which looks just like the Chicago World's Fair, but way bigger. Later on, Flip leads Nemo into a string of adventures, stirring up trouble across the kingdom. Eventually, as they're dodging the guards, Flip takes Nemo into an underground lair beneath the palace. Nemo's clearly getting uneasy as they go deeper, until they reach a massive door with the same symbol as the key. The movie plays it off as if it's just a random mistake, but it definitely feels like Flip knows exactly what he's doing, setting Nemo up to open it. It's worth noting Nemo's wearing the top hat and coat here, which definitely feels symbolic. Nemo opens the door, and inside is this black goo monster with multiple red eyes. They both panic, slam the door shut and run away, leaving the Ouroboros key behind. There's a really pretty scene right after, where the whole city lights up like a World's Fair for Nemo's coronation. Nemo arrives late, and the king announces he's passing on the royal scepter to him. This scepter seems to be some kind of aether tech. The king uses it to shoot plasma into the sky, lighting everything up with flashes of color. He even recites an incantation as he does this, summoning the spectacle. The whole kingdom is celebrating, but Nemo's anxious because he didn't get the key back. Sure enough, the black goo escapes, takes over King Morpheus, and spreads chaos through the city. But Nemo wakes up, and just like that, it's all over. Just a dream? Or was it? Now, before getting into what all this really means, let's circle back to the comics for a second. The original Little Nemo comics are insanely underrated. Nothing else was like it back then. And some of these strips feel like they were made on psychedelics, just completely surreal. You have themes of underground giants, wild architecture, and all kinds of weird creatures. Masonic references show up all over, plus a huge obsession with clowns. The comics never really explain the clowns either. Where did Flip come from? In the comic, King Morpheus's guards are clowns. Even the professor who invites Nemo in the first place is a clown. So Slumberland is the circus. It's the fair. It's the place Nemo goes to get transformed. There's tons of artwork with beautiful buildings, definitely giving off Tartaria or World's Fair vibes. But look closely and you'll see the Masonic motifs, like the pillars with globes on top. One thing that's super odd is there's the same cannibal joke in Little Nemo as with Popeye. In one story, they end up in a jungle, get caught by cannibals, and are taken to mushroom-shaped huts. They're brought up on a platform coiled by a spiraling snake, into a place called the Grand Reception in the Grand Hall, where they go through a ritual and wind up in cauldrons, about to be eaten. Right after, a cannibal actually saves them, taking them back to a ship on a sled driven by goats and a frog, traveling through the wild. In the movie, this shows up as the princess's chariot, but there's definitely more going on here with the secret order symbolism and initiations. In the comics, it's way more obvious that not all of Nemo's dreams are wonderful. Weirdly, one of these cannibals becomes a main character later on. Giants are another reoccurring theme. There's a strip where Nemo and the cannibal get turned into giants and wander around massive New York buildings. The comic also keeps breaking the fifth wall too, so it's not just a dream. Sometimes the characters interact with the real world, causing events like massive fires, or they talk straight to the reader. One strip even has them eating the title of Slumberland because the artist is starving them. You'll also see crystal architecture and crystal palaces in several different panels. Some references are more subtle, like Nemo going into a barbershop to be turned into a clown to hide from the police. It's worth pointing out that pretty much all the natives and residents of Slumberland are clowns, and that doesn't seem to be an accident. Flip is a businessman clown in a top hat, which totally lines up with the idea that these are Masons, especially since Freemasonry and the circus have a long, weird history together. And they keep coming back to this cannibal bit. So what is it actually referencing? There's even one story where Santa literally kidnaps Nemo and takes him to the White City. They blend Slumberland and the North Pole in a few different episodes. But there's some really blatant Freemasonic symbolism too. In one strip, all the kids are in a classroom, and the teacher says that they have this new machine to take over the exhausting job of spanking the students all day. One kid acts up, so they strap him into an automatic correcto-electric manipulator and spanking administrator. On the surface, it just looks like another spanking gag, but there are compass shapes right above the center, and a lit candle behind the machine. Like we said earlier, Masons had this weird obsession with spanking and initiations. Then there's yet another strip where the cannibals try to eat Nemo. Seems way too deliberate just to be a running joke. There's one that's pretty disturbing, because it hints at the artist actually torturing these cartoon entities. There are a bunch of meta fifth wall scenes, but one stands out where Nemo gets turned into a bad drawing. It's actually kinda creepy. Nemo seems scared as he's reduced to this crude stick figure. But one of the wildest strips in the whole series is where it shows the White City being built by giants. And right after, you see the entire city buried. Kinda makes you wonder if there's something deeper here being referenced. There's so much more in these strips, but just to run through a few. Nemo gets turned into a trained monkey in a circus and locked in a cage, and the monkeys all look like clowns. Again, possibly Masons. You see more big white cities, great fires, tons of rose garden references, and even one where Nemo is flattened and hung to dry on Mars. And you can't ignore the airships. There's a whole arc where an owl gives Nemo and his friends a tour of different cities using actual architectural photos. The pillars with globes show up again and again. And there's the old woman who lives in a shoe, packed with orphans. And for whatever reason, they keep making these pill jokes, kids refusing to take pills, doctor pill, maybe hinting at keeping everyone locked in to a certain frequency or reality. To wrap it up, there's this bizarre strip called Impy Interferes with the Weather, where Slumberland literally has weather modification technology, again shown with the two-pillar symbolism, and it all ends with an apocalypse. Interestingly, before Little Nemo and Slumberland, Winsor McCay started with an earlier cartoon called Dream of a Rarebit Fiend. This is where the Masonic references really become undeniable. Also, it's worth noting that McCay was a Chicago Freemason from a whole line of Masons, and his full name was Zenas Windsor McCay. Most people have no clue. In Dreams of a Rarebit Fiend, the secret society stuff is right in your face. There's a strip where a husband tells his wife the secrets of the lodge, but she then tells her friend, and then her friend tells the women's club about what happened to Mr. Gab during his initiation. But we never actually find out what this secret is or what really happened to Mr. Gab. When Mr. Gab meets up with his fellow Masons at the lodge, there's a scene where he's stripped naked and two demons stir a cauldron of tar, then cover him in tar and feathers, an actual Masonic humiliation ritual. And of course, it's all just a dream. The husband tells his wife, "I told you that Rarebit Fiend would get you." So what is this Rarebit Fiend? Rarebit means rabbit, so that's a down the rabbit hole nod. But it was also a popular dish, toast with cheese, that was said to cause crazy dreams, just like Stilton cheese. There was even a 1906 film where the main character hallucinates in his sleep, flying over the city like Little Nemo. Rarebit was darker, definitely aimed more at adults, and got into more graphic, unsettling stuff. There are a few World's Fair references in Rarebit Fiend too, which cements the link between Little Nemo and the fairs. You get World Fair balloon ships and competitions, giants at the fair, even giants just roaming the city. And again, the cannibal joke shows up here too, before Little Nemo. So this whole cannibal motif clearly isn't random. Even the main cannibal wears a top hat, just like in Popeye. The Freemasonic theme in Little Nemo is pretty obvious, but it becomes in your face in one specific strip. Flip is a regular boomerang. In this one, the crew goes through an initiation rite. A guy says the king will only see those who can give the sign of the Knights of the Shooting Star. He whispers to a clown, clearly another insider, and tells him to give the crew the 333rd degree, meaning putting them through the initiation. The clown says, "You're about to be initiated as a Knight of the Shooting Star." And Flip just shrugs it off saying, "You can't scare me, I know what lodges are." So right there, the clowns are Freemasons. It's Flip and the cannibal getting initiated, not the kids. Flip even mentions the feathers again. And meanwhile, during this whole ritual, the king is chatting with Dr. Pill and says a professor is about to give a hypnotism show. He can hypnotize elephants. And you can guess what that really means. Probably kids too. Flip crashes in, the professor bails, and Nemo wakes up saying, "I wish I had seen the show." So what's really going on here? What's the connection between altered states, psychedelics, and secret societies? It's worth noting that Little Nemo could be called the first real cartoon. There's this short film on it that's pretty weird. There were earlier French animations, but those were simple chalkboard sketches, nothing even remotely close to what McCay pulled off. Little Nemo was the first true animated film that actually told a vivid story and had realistic movement in 3D form. The animation is so good, it's honestly suspicious. Rotoscoping hadn't even been invented. So how did McCay get this level of fluidity and consistency? The jump in technique from anything that came before is massive. There are scenes where the characters morph and distort in ways you just didn't see before. The movie claims that a bunch of McKay's business friends funded him and that he did all the drawings by hand, 4,000 pen drawings in a month. They even show him using an early animation tool to play back the frames. But if you watch the animation, it feels almost impossible for that time. There's a level of smoothness that even modern animation can't match, and pulling that off by hand on paper in a month just doesn't add up, even with today's tools. This was the most popular media of the time, and it would have been a tool for projecting a specific set of frequencies to the population, blurring the lines between what was real and dream. But going back to the movie, now the symbolism is pretty obvious. Nemo enters his dream and finds himself in a World's Fair utopia. But after King Morpheus gives him the Ouroboros key, Flip tricks him into opening the forbidden door, the reset. Morpheus is all about transformation, both for Nemo and the city itself, as Nemo gets initiated into the secrets. After the reset or nightmare gets unleashed, Nemo returns to Slumberland to see everything destroyed and in ruins. So again, it's a symbol for the World's Fair reset, orchestrated by the Freemasons, the clowns in top hats, and then turned back into a circus using the scepter from an older era, this ancient tech handed down to the new inheritors. But Little Nemo wasn't even the first cartoon to reference the World's Fair. Way before that, there was Puck, a super successful humor magazine from the late 1800s that did a bunch of political cartoons. You've probably seen some of them. Puck had some pretty strange takes on the World's Fair too. Their mascot is this weird naked kid, supposed to be a cherub, but it's just kind of odd. There's one cartoon about the Chicago World's Fair where they're making fun of how bad the hotel construction was, showing a hotel collapsing in on itself, saying that it was going to embarrass Chicago. Puck even had its own building at the fair, where you could actually watch the color printing process happen. Another cartoon shows a room full of businessmen toasting around a lady in red labeled Chicago, all raising their glasses to the fair. It was a great success. There's another one that shows the contrast between the city and the fair site, pointing out how it was an escape from the real harsh world. There's also a cartoon with a donkey in a suit, and there's a paper at his feet that reads, "The World's Fair must be closed on the Sabbath." And then there's Puck in a top hat and suit, basically telling these businessmen, "Come on, get out of the dark ages. This is supposed to be the people's fair." Another cartoon shows Uncle Sam holding a bunch of nations, looking like some kind of closing ceremony. Puck also had some cartoons on Masons. There's one where the Masons are shown between two barber poles, the barber pillars, which is another weird connection. Barbers are a secret Masonic reference too. Barbers had their own guilds and social clubs, even a hierarchy, like with Master Barber. The barber pole itself goes back to medieval bloodletting, which was literally performed by barbers. Plus, the worshipful company of barbers, their coat of arms features a griffin at the top. It really seems like Barber has more layers than people realize. Another weird thing, the 1933 Chicago's World's Fair had a whole kids area called Enchanted Island, and it's kind of very similar to Little Nemo and Slumberland with the clowns, flying machines, and there's even the woman that lives in a shoe, full of babies. But those later World's Fairs never even came close to the scale and grandeur of the late 19th century fairs. So why couldn't they recreate that level of architecture after the 1930s? Even DC Comics got in on it with some comics about the 1939 New York Fair, where Superman, Batman, and Robin all visit the fair. There are a few strange advertisements with the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, like this one showing the reset of the city while Columbia watches from a cliff, and the World's Fair under signifying the new age. One of the most popular examples of World's Fairs and resets is mentioned in the movie Meet Me in St. Louis with Judy Garland, which focuses around the St. Louis World Fair of 1904. There's this weird scene where Tootie describes this horrific event. She says that big waves came up and flooded the whole city. When the water went back, it was all muddy and horrible, full of dead bodies. Then right after that, we get a shot of the World's Fair. Another reference to World's Fairs and resets. So what was she talking about? Apparently, she's describing a fair exhibit which featured a diorama or a realistic show of the Galveston catastrophe. It was a real disaster in 1900 where over 8,000 people died from a horrible flood. But what's so weird about this is early filmmakers took advantage of this and featured it as a show at the fair where they would show all the destruction and death to the crowds. One fairgoer wrote of the experience in a 1904 letter to friends. The Galveston flood is one of those electrical illusions which are so natural that they make you wonder whether or not they are an illusion or real. Is this what Tootie was talking about? Or are the writers hinting towards some deeper symbolism here? Then there's Tomorrowland, which in short is a dystopian movie about how Freemasons are using the World's Fair to recruit people to another dimension where they can live in a breakaway civilization, where they control our world through a future manifestation device with the intent of bringing on the apocalypse. The idea is presented as if Tomorrowland is the future at the beginning. This is a story about the future. The future can be scary. But is it really about the future? At the beginning, they show the 1964 New York World's Fair, where Walker goes to a World Fair in order to show off his new invention, a jetpack. There's an exhibit here called the Hall of Invention, where a man inside the order is rejecting the invention because it doesn't work. But Athena, this mysterious girl, sees something in him and gives him a pin. That pin is his key, literally a pass into another realm. He's scanned in during It's a Small World, and then transported into a totally different reality where tech is centuries ahead of ours. But this is not the future. It's another dimension at the present, where the creators, or elite thinkers, in the late 1800s created a city, kind of in a parallel reality, a dream, in which they create futuristic inventions, secretly, far beyond anything we possess. There are also subtle nods to dystopia in the film. When Casey's in the classroom, they are covering Huxley and Orwell as a lesson. Casey finds the pin in the police station, symbolizing her confinement. She is freed when she touches the pin. It brings her to something that exists at the same time as the present. She would bump into walls as she's trying to move around in the other world, so they exist at the same time. The whole concept was what she's seeing when she touches the pin actually real or just an illusion? It's not until she meets Athena that she is initiated into the truth. The rulers of that realm also control this realm. Their androids work in everyday shops and they are the Secret Service. They essentially are a shadow government. Athena is an artificially intelligent, realistic human android and is a part of the Order, but she's on her own mission to recruit how she sees fit through searching for inspired people who believe in the future. Well, they're out of pins, so the only way back is through Walker. As they're driving, there's a scene on the highway with an advertisement for a movie showing an apocalyptic city. At Walker's house, he tells Casey, with one eye visible, that Tomorrowland was a commercial. It's a false illusion. It doesn't exist. Another initiation rite happens in the teleportation device. He tells her to blindfold herself, and she says why. He jokingly responds, because justice is blind. They're teleporting to the Eiffel Tower, where there's a museum that shows Eiffel meeting with Tesla, and this is where we discover what the movie's about. A breakaway civilization of Freemasons who during the 1889 World's Fair began this project, and keep in mind Eiffel was actually a Freemason in real life, so that does have real world connections, even with Tesla and his free energy machine. And in the movie, they're referencing this. They say, the Eiffel Tower is an antenna, a device that would find another world. Tesla, Eiffel, Verne, and Edison were the original founders of Tomorrowland. Tesla designed the Eiffel Tower as an antenna for searching trans-dimensional frequencies. Using the key, which is an Edison phonograph, unlocks a secret door. Similar to National Treasure, also about Freemasons, they discovered there's a secret rocket ship that goes up into space and falls back down into an alternative dimension of this utopia. Tomorrowland isn't about the future. It's about World's Fair secret technology and resets. There's an invention there, which is this 360 monitor hooked up to a quantum computer that can predict every possible outcome. However, what's actually happening is these resets are being broadcasted out and influencing people's actions and beliefs. They're influencing this by broadcasting visions of doom and apocalypse, like the movie advertisement that then becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. People like doom. They will pay to see it. They're addicted to it, ultimately actually manifesting it through their intention. But it's important to note that the leader of the society was well aware of it, and they're actually broadcasting this out through some large antenna. It makes you think, what were these antennas that were at every World's Fair in history? What were they really designed for? They even have this cloning technology that creates child recruiters who never age, as Athena was one of these non-aging child robots that essentially work for the society. Slumberland is Tomorrowland. It's a place where Masons can go to attempt to attract new members. The coincidences don't end there. Perhaps the most bizarre World's Fair media of them all is a recent horror movie called We're All Going to the World's Fair. It's incredibly slow, and it's not that enjoyable of a watch, but it is unique. It's a movie about a girl who takes part in an online challenge. The game involves you giving blood, and she actually does this with a pin, just like Tomorrowland. And also, the main character here is called Casey. In order to do this challenge, she takes this pin with a skull on it, pokes her finger until it bleeds, where she then says the incantation, "I want to go to the World's Fair," 3 times. So she's doing a blood ritual, then she watches a strobe light video. The story is that people would do this challenge on the internet, and then weird things would start happening. They would transform into something else. But there are many underlying themes here. It is established that the historical World's Fair is connected to the movie, as when she's searching for videos on the challenge, she comes across a video with a cover that has an Ouroboros on it, the loop theory, and there's a video on the World's Fair. The same themes are in this movie. It's about how after Casey does this challenge, she struggles with what is real or illusion. You do this challenge and you create a tulpa, a new form, something that takes over you. When she talks to JLB, he tells her that there's an entire history behind the challenge. He tells her how the challenge is a portal, it's a conduit. You can access your dreams, the deepest things inside of you, and it changes you. This is very similar to Slumberland, and there are many Joker and clown themes, This JLB has a collection of clowns. Throughout the movie, you're shown random videos related to the channel, and then a refresh button would show up. They do this repeatedly, hinting to a reset, a loop. Towards the end of the movie, Casey discusses strange loop theory, and her sense that the world has always been false. Was the game real? Did the World's Fair challenge even happen? Or was Casey just faking it? It's strange to see so many connections showing up across all kinds of World's Fair media. Cartoons, comics, movies, even old advertisements. Is it really all just a coincidence? Or is there something deeper running through all of this? Why do World's Fairs keep getting tied to resets, hidden rituals, lost cities, and secret orders? And what realm do these fairs actually belong to? Are they events that really happened? Or do they exist more in some shared dream space, a kind of parallel reality crafted by the people in charge? The line between what's real and what's imagined just keeps getting fuzzier the more you look. Maybe these stories, symbols, and resets are hinting towards the cycles of history, the patterns behind how reality gets constructed. In the end, all we can hope is that our minds may be unveiled.
Let go of everything you think to be true. Relax the mind and ask the question, do I truly understand what this reality is?